mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episode 1, the pilot episode of the new Showtime series, Yellowjackets. I really enjoyed this episode. I like this show because, you know, I talk about a lot on this channel about laying groundwork for a show. And some shows need more time to do that. Like, that's what happened with Foundation. They needed probably 3-4 episodes to just really introduce everybody to the world that they live in. And just so we can get accustomed to what the rest of the series is going to look like, so we don't have to think about who is this, what's going on, you know, just understanding that universe. This show, in this first 60 minutes, laid so much groundwork and so many different plot threads that can happen for each of these characters in 2 separate timelines. Like, they really kind of set themselves up to be able to have this show run for a really long time, should it get a good enough reception and get renewed and whatnot. But yeah, I'm super excited about this show because there's so much potential here. And when you have potential in multiple timelines, that just makes it's almost like I don't feel like it's gonna write itself at this point necessarily, but I feel like they showed me enough in this episode to feel like I'm in good hands as far as the direction that they're gonna take these 2 timelines, with both the girls as teenagers, stranded, living this kind of Lord of the Flies kind of creating this kind of Lord of the Flies society, and then with the adults kind of coping with what happened there, trying to keep it under wraps, possibly having issues with each other as adults based on what happened when they were kids. There's so much potential here. And then they also dabble in different kinds of genres. You can have some horror aspects, you can have some kind of relationship kind of character growth, character building, character study type moments as well. You can have there's even a little bit of comedy in here every now and then. Comedy sounds like a stretch. There's a couple of laughs here and there, but there's so much potential here. So I'm really just excited to see where this is going. It's created by, I'm going to look at these names here, Ashley Lyle and Bart Nickerson. I looked them up because I was curious. You know, I hadn't heard anything about this show prior to it being released. I had people reach out to me, multiple people, to say that I should check this show out. And I didn't know anything about it. And I'm confused. Why don't I know anything about this show? And I looked up so when that happens, I kind of like to see, okay, who are the creators here? Who's writing for this show? Do I know any of these people? Can I tie them into anything else that I know and love? And I looked up Ashley Lyle and Bart Nickerson, and they don't really have too much work under their belts. They both wrote for Narcos and one of those Narcos spinoffs, Narcos Mexico. But other than that, I didn't really see too much that really jumped out to me here. So I'm also interested to see how 2 creators who don't have a ton of work under their belt are going to carry a show with such weight to it, and so many different things that can happen that are both interesting, on the face of it, you know, what's going to happen with these characters, but then also commenting on the building of society or trauma, or dealing with interacting with people who you might have a shared trauma with, these deeper issues that this show could explore as well. They're putting a lot on their plates, but watching the kind of the this season on that happens after the credits, it looks really fucking interesting, man. And I'm it seems like they're actually making it even more complex than it looks just on the surface after watching the first episode. I'm thinking man, there's so many different places they can go. And then I watched that and I'm they're opening somebody sends them a letter or something with a symbol on it. I'm this shit's gonna get all kinds of crazy. So I'm really excited to see what happens here. So I'm gonna start by briefly explaining the premise, and then I'm going to get into a little bit of specifics, which, you know, one might call spoilers. So if you're watching this just to see what I think of the show, well, you've probably seen plenty, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. And if you don't want to be, quote unquote, spoiled on some specific aspects of the first episode, you're going to want to cut this video off after I've talked about the premise of the show. So essentially the premise is these girls who are on a soccer team in high school. The team is called the Yellowjackets, so that's where the name of the show comes from. I believe it's a high school in New Jersey. They're really good at soccer. They win the state, and now they're going to nationals. They hop on a plane to fly to nationals, a private plane, that one of the girls' parents, I believe, owns or can afford to rent. They are going to fly to the Nationals in Seattle from, like I said, I believe it was New Jersey. And there's a very brief moment where you can hear over the PA, like the pilot, and like the girls are actually talking, or there's something going on primarily on the screen. And the only reason I caught this was because I had the captions on. But you can hear the pilot say something to the effect of like, we're going to divert a little bit north to avoid a storm. So something about flying over Canada or something like that. So we know that this trip from New Jersey to Seattle is not going to be entirely over the United States. It diverts over Canada. Plane crashes. There are some survivors. There are presumably some who don't survive. And that aspect of the show, the aspect that takes place while they're children, is essentially going to be like this fight for survival, this forming of like a society to survive within the wilderness in Canada. We see in this episode that there's at the very least there's gonna be some cannibalism. So we're starting off there. Day one, we're gonna have some cannibalism. So who knows where else we're gonna go with what they're gonna have to deal with or what they're gonna have to do while they're stranded in the woods. We find out it's for 19 months that they're there, so nearly 2 years. So that I don't see how it doesn't span 2 Canadian winters. Yeah, they're gonna get into some shit. And then in the present day, in 2021, this is actually the kid storyline takes place in 1996. So 25 years later, in 2021, we have a handful of survivors. There could be more who are adults now, but we focus on a handful, like 3 or 4. Shauna, who is the adult version of what seems to be kind of like the second most important character amongst the children, but the most important character amongst the adults, but more on that later. Thaisa, who is running for Senate, it looks like. Misty, who works in an old folks home, played by a virtually unrecognizable Christina Ricci. And Natalie, who is fresh out of rehab, played by Juliette Lewis, and she kind of seems stuck on revenge. So like you have what happened to them while they were stranded, and then you have what appears to be a storyline that's not just going to be Natalie seemingly seeking out some sort of revenge, but also them trying to like cover up any details of what they did while they were there coming out, and then possibly beef between them as well. So whole lot of potential going on there. So if you don't want to be, I'm not going to go too in depth on specific stuff, but if you don't want to hear any specific stuff and you feel like, okay, I know enough about the premise, he really fucks with the show, I'm going to go watch it, and you don't want to hear anything else, now's the time to turn the video off. I'm going to talk about a little bit of specifics for maybe like the next, I don't know, 6-7 minutes, something like that, and I'll wrap this thing up. So there's a couple of mysteries that I think this show set up really well that I find pretty interesting. The first is, so the episode opens up with a girl in what looks like a nightgown running through the woods in the snow. She's clearly being chased. She's passing like all these kind of like symbols, kind of like they look like kind of like satanic symbols and shit that are like hanging from trees or painted on trees or carved into trees, all kinds of different things. She falls into what is very clearly a setup trap. There's a bunch of like sticks and stuff that are pointing up. So she essentially is impaled when she falls down into this hole. It was a trap set. It looks like a regular ground, but it gives away and she falls into this hole and is impaled. And we see a necklace with a heart-shaped pendant, which we later find out belongs to Jackie, the clear leader of the girls as children. She's the captain of the soccer team and everything. She seems to be the one who has the most poise, the one who is the leader of all the rest of them, all that good stuff. She has this heart pendant. So we are meant to presume at that moment, if we're paying attention to the connection with the pendant, that that's Jackie who fell down into that hole. But plot twist, there's more. We don't know for sure that that's Jackie because Jackie gives that necklace to Shauna on the airplane. And we know that Shauna is alive in present day, assuming that's actually Shauna and not some like imposter person who like took over Shauna's identity and is now pretending to be adult Shauna. Hey, it could happen. But surface level, that's Shauna as an adult. So we know that she got the necklace she survived, but that person who they killed and ate had the necklace at that time. So maybe that person swiped it and ran because it wasn't her. No, I think it was hanging from the neck. But who knows? We'll see. But I think that's a really interesting mystery. Where is Jackie if that's not Jackie? You know, we don't see her as an adult, so who knows what happens to her when they're in the wilderness. Really interested to see what happens there. And then there's an interesting shot, too, where after they show whoever this is that fell onto these sticks holding this necklace or with this necklace on their neck, the person who was chasing them is seen standing over the hole, and they have on like these, what looks like maybe like pink Converse or something like that. I kind of like went through the episode again, like kind of just like moving the cursor along to kind of see if I could see, just to get an idea of where I'm at in the episode, looking for anybody who might be wearing pink shoes. So I did a lot, but I didn't see anyone. So I don't know who that was standing there. Could have been any one of them. Another interesting thing that this is probably what I'm most interested in is what happens between Jackie and Shauna. And when I say what happens, I don't necessarily mean once the plane crashes, assuming that Jackie lives, because we don't know. Jackie seemed knocked out while the plane was crashing. Like maybe she had too many Valiums. I don't know, but I'm curious to see what happened between them in the past as well, because there's a couple of things that show Shauna having an interpretation of their relationship that is drastically different from Jackie's interpretation of the relationship. Jackie looks at her as like, this is my best friend. We're going to go to college together. She said they're going to go to Rutgers. They have a whole thing planned out. You know, she's talking to her about everything that she's doing with her little boyfriend, Jeff. All this stuff. It seems like a very best friend kind of relationship. But then from Shauna's perspective, we find out, again, as a child, one, not only is she fucking her friend's boyfriend at that time and has done it multiple times, but we also find out ultimately she ends up marrying this guy. So to some, like, I don't know, I'm not even going to go there, but there's a whole lot to wonder about that as well, because she looks still fairly young and it looks like they're cutting a wedding cake. So I'm like, is this, you know, shortly after they return from this 19 months in the wilderness? So now she's maybe say 2 years older and now she's with Jeff. So does that kind of imply that something happened to Jackie? I don't know, but she was fucking with Jeff the whole time. Then we also know that Jackie has planned for them to go to Rutgers together, but Shauna opens at some point an acceptance letter for Brown, and we know that she ultimately ends up going to Brown and graduating from Brown because that reporter girl said so. So what happened there as well? She didn't go to Rutgers. She ended up going to Brown. She graduated from Brown. So all of this is like a big what happened to Jackie mystery that I'm super fucking invested in right now. They've done a lot of work with making that intriguing. And then, like I said, she marries Jeff. They have kids. So yeah, who knows what happens there? But that's probably the mystery that I'm most interested in is what happened between them and what happened to Jackie, especially as it pertains to her relationship with Shauna. So I want to talk a little bit about who the girls have become as compared to where they started as children before they go to nationals compared to how they are as adults. Shauna seems to be the leader amongst them as adults, which again begs the question, what happened to Jackie, since Jackie was the leader when they were kids, and now Shauna kind of seems to be in charge. So that's interesting to find out. We don't know. I don't think we know what Shauna does for a living. I don't know if that's touched on at all in this episode, but we do see her kill a rabbit. So I'm wondering if she's kind of like getting into this habit of like, yeah, you know, she started off at the top of like with like killing humans and eating them. So now she's like, yeah, killing a rabbit, eating that, not a big deal. So I wonder if that's going to be something that gets a little weird with her giving some very interesting wild game to her family. Thaisa is played by the same actress who played Evie on The Leftovers. So I'm always going to be following my Leftovers people around, unintentionally in this case. I watched it. I'm like, holy shit, it's Evie. But Thaisa, as an adult, is now married to a woman. They have a kid, I'm guessing adopted, and she looks to be running for Senate. So that's going to add some complications as well. Like, you know, you have a whole lot of skeletons in that closet, and you want to run for Senate? Yeah, good luck with that. Misty, who I think is like the equipment manager for the girls' team as a teenager, grows up to apparently work in an old folks' home or something. And she is apparently not the greatest attendant that there is, or nurse. You know, she goes to see this lady and she gives her food. Apparently, this woman hasn't been eating. The woman knocks the food on the floor after Misty confirms that I guess she wet the bed or something, or shit the bed, or whatever the case may be. And I think that Misty thinks maybe she did it on purpose, because she comes back after the food is also knocked over and says, you know, maybe it's your morphine that is upsetting your tummy, so we're going to skip this dosage, aka and then she says something like, don't fuck with me. And so, aka, since you did fuck with me, you're going to be in a lot of pain for the next 24 hours. So, like, I think that, or 48 hours possibly. So, we show that Misty has a pretty vindictive and evil side. And then Natalie, who seems kind of like the rebellious kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like an outcast, kind of. Like the rebellious outcast. She's hanging out with a couple of guys. She's drinking. She's doing drugs. Like she totally is tripping balls at this party that they go to. And then we find out that Natalie, adult Natalie, played by Juliette Lewis, has been in rehab and is just now getting out of rehab and seems to be set on some sort of revenge. She has an interesting line that becomes a lot clearer as the episode progresses, where she's at the rehab and they're doing one of those group therapy sessions, and she says something like to the effect of, like, I lost my purpose once we were found, which is a weird thing to say, right? Because, like, that lets you know, like, she felt alive when they were when they were in the woods. And then she says she got rescued and lost her purpose, but she's found it again. And then we later see her, like, go to a storage unit. There's a gun in the back of a car, like a rifle. Like, she's clearly set out for revenge. We see her watching Misty. So, like, the idea that I lost my purpose when I became safe, and when they took me away from whatever happened over that 19 months of wilderness, I lost my purpose. But now that I'm free from rehab, I've regained purpose again, and now I'm gonna go get these women. Like, that's interesting to me too. Like, man, they're setting up a lot of interesting stuff. So that's kind of where we stand right now at the end of the first episode. I do have a couple of thoughts that I wanted to mention though. Adult Shauna masturbating to a picture of her daughter's shirtless boyfriend was so fucking creepy. Like, man, weird, very weird. But we already know how she feels about fucking other people's man, so her daughter better watch out. And then, like, the boyfriend comes in and says something like, oh, you looking hot today, or something like that. Like, he compliments her appearance, Shauna's appearance. And yeah, I hope they don't set up Shauna fucking her daughter's boyfriend like that. Oh man. But hey, we already know how the lack of respect that she had for Jackie. And it made me wonder too, did Jackie do something to her that we don't know about, that Jackie thinks is behind them, that Shauna does not think is behind them, and maybe she's having sex with Jeff as like as revenge or something like that. My next thought was, why did Jeff climb out of the window at the front of the house? You might as well just went out the front door, unless the parents were there. Like, I don't know. Maybe the parents were there and he couldn't just walk out of the front door. But also, why would you do that if the parents are in the house? So, like, but him climbing out of the front of the house at the second level window, like, anybody would have seen that. Like, why wouldn't you just go out the back? I don't know. Like I said, I'm going to assume that the parents are in the house, even though the show doesn't give us that. Shauna has a phone in a safe that she uses to call Taissa. At the time, we think she's calling the reporter because she's holding the reporter's card. But we come to find out when she's meeting with Taissa that she Googled her and that's not really a reporter. So she gets very suspicious. But it's interesting to me that she has a phone in a safe that she uses. And she also has journals in there. And we find out that she was writing about their experiences in those journals. I think we see her right before the plane crash writing in a journal. So there's going to be a whole lot of quote unquote evidence within that safe of what happened there. And then the last thing that I thought was funny was when I was taking my notes when I was watching it, when they bring, apparently they've cut up whoever this girl is that fell and got impaled, and they cook her and they're going to eat her. And I when I put in my notes, I put something like, they bring cooked person bits over to the leader, the one that had the horns. But I don't know. I thought the term cooked person bits was kind of funny. I don't know. I put it in here. But that's all I got for episode 1. I am going to cover this each week. I don't know how. That now makes 4 things on Sunday that I'm going to be covering. My hope is that Showtime is also going to put this on demand at the beginning of Sunday. So my hope is that I can watch this and Dexter early Sunday and get those videos out on Sunday, and then watch Succession and Insecure at night, and then get those videos up Monday morning. That's my hope. We'll see what happens. That relies on Showtime putting this out early, and that also relies on me finding the time on Sundays to watch it and get it done. So we'll see what happens, but I do plan on covering this. I think this is going to be a really cool fucking show. So stick with me, and I'll see you guys for the next, I think it's a 10 episode season, so 9 weeks. See you guys for the next 9 weeks. Peace.